Hello and welcome to Sounding Board, a community access television production of Serapis International of Novato in partnership with Novato Public Access Television. My name is Madeline Peters, Professor, School of Education, Dominican University of California, and I will serve as moderator of today's program, which is VoteSmart Challenge, Team Education. This program focuses on selected educational issues especially important for the viewing public to take into consideration in a presidential election year. We have graduate students from the School of Education who have done serious academic research beyond Google searches into the academic databases to research selected issues in education that really affect all of us. The purpose of this program is to help inform citizens about the educational agenda in the upcoming presidential election. This program is also part of a larger VoteSmart Challenge series sponsored by Dominican University of California. A special event will be held on the Dominican campus at the Conlin Gymnasium on October 23rd from 9 a.m. until 12 noon. This event is a public event and it is free, and I'll welcome you to join us to hear about selected issues from different faculty members and their graduate students at Dominican. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters. I have to my far right Carrie Gautier, and I have next to me Juliet Schiller. And we're going to start with Carrie. Each one has researched an area of education and will present essentially a summary of what they found. Carrie, you're going to set this sort of whole series in team education in context, in historical context. So Carrie, please.
Well, the history of education and educational policy goes pretty far back, obviously. This country is founded very closely with the public education system, and the Department of Education, which is what guides our federal policy today, was actually founded not to make policy at all, but actually to just do research to help local education agencies, school districts, things like that, to set up in practical ways. So really it was about infrastructure. As time went on, we saw great changes where the purpose changed and even where it's located within the body of our government has changed. So really what we're looking at today is completely different than what it started out to be. Today, the most guiding force that the public's aware of is called No Child Left Behind, which was an extension of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And basically, the purpose of it is to create accountability for schools and for teachers and for students so that we know that we're doing what we set out to do. There are a lot of critics of No Child Left Behind, which is what we're seeing in this election. And it's pretty relevant. And I personally think we're at a point of huge change in education. Even I was just watching the forum between the presidential candidates, and they were supposed to be talking about national service. And so most people, when they see that, it comes to mind military service. But actually, what Obama kept bringing up was teaching and working in hospitals and other ways to serve, and that should be rewarded and supported, whether it's we pay for the education or support this need that we have. So you'll see as we talk to all of our other team members what some of those issues are, and our candidates are really focused on it. It's showing that the public is very concerned with education. A recent Gallup poll actually showed that most people think that their local school is great and they support it and it's doing well, but they're concerned that within the global context we're being outcompeted, that elsewhere, other countries, they're just doing better. So that's the public perception, and so it's really important to the public what these candidates have to say about what they're going to do about education. The basic platforms of the two candidates, which my colleagues will go into more depth over, but the basic platforms are McCain believes in school choice. So if your school isn't doing well, he believes that you have the right to go elsewhere with the dollars that the public funds, and those will support your student or you to go to that other school. Obama, it's a much broader plan. He's looking at 0 to 5 education and really pushing that. He's looking at higher and better standards. Our accountability measures are highly criticized today, that standardized tests maybe are not the best way to go. So he wants to look into other options there. He wants to support, as I mentioned, teachers, which Juliet will talk about with us. And ultimately, he also wants to see college more affordable and more science and math in the classroom and better technology. So these are all things that we're fortunate to hear about today also.
Carrie, thank you very much. You've set a nice context for the history of the federal involvement and the relationship between the federal and state. And it's interesting too, as you said, parents are concerned about their own school, but taking the opportunity to step back and look at education more in terms of a global perspective. Okay, and now Juliet, I'd like you to discuss, you're going to talk about teacher support, teacher recruitment, teacher attrition. Go ahead.
Great, thanks.
Thank
Hi, Madeline. Well, I'd like you to picture a revolving door, and you have new teachers going through this revolving door, excited about getting into the teaching profession, excuse me, and doing everything that they've wanted to do for their whole life. And the problem is within the first 3 years, about a third of those teachers are leaving that profession and walking through that revolving door. And in 5 years, you have about half of those teachers leaving through that door. So you can see it's quite a problem to keep quality teachers in our schools. And in inner city schools, we have even a greater mass of those teachers leaving the profession. And the problem really is that we have teachers who are new, who are placed into subject areas where they may not be competent in those areas, they may not have that background, and especially in inner city schools, you have new teachers who are often placed in a subject they have no preparation for because of the lack of teachers in that area. And so they're finding themselves without support, without that subject matter competency, and you can see where those teachers end up leaving the profession. So it's a real problem with the inner city schools as well. When you take a look at the presidential candidates, they both offer very different strategies for recruiting and supporting those teachers. And if you take a look at McCain, he'd like to have merit pay for teachers, and that'll be based on test scores. And so if those teachers have students who perform well and do well on the testing and receive high test scores, then he'd like to reward those teachers for doing that and helping to prepare those students. He also has the idea to get poor teachers out of the profession altogether. And he has suggested that he will help find them a new occupation instead of keeping them within the schools. And I'd like to ask McCain, as far as that goes, if those are poor teachers because they've lost their passion, or if it's because they were underprepared and not supported. Then we take a look at Obama. And Obama has a merit pay strategy as well, but what he'd like to do is he would like to provide merit bonuses and pay for teachers that are willing to mentor new teachers. So these are veteran teachers who have the skills and the leadership qualities to come in and take those new teachers under their wing and really mentor them. And if they're willing to do that, that he'll give them a merit bonus or some type of pay for that. He'd also like to recruit new teachers and have bonuses and the option to have part of their schooling tuition paid for, and in this way get teachers excited about getting back into the profession. And so he's looking at those things. And if I were to ask Obama a question, I would ask him if they would be supported in those 5 years, those first crucial 5 years where we find a lot of those teachers, more than half, leaving the profession altogether. And so I think you can see what a problem that we face with the teacher recruiting, the support and the mentoring. And of course, the question is, where does the money come from? And at this time, Obama's answered that question, that he'd like to take some of the budget money away from NASA and put that into the education system. So that's where we are today.
Okay. Well, Juliet, thank you. You could see that the problem of recruiting and retaining and supporting teachers is extremely critical. In order to have a stable educational program, you need to have the leadership in the form of the teachers, well qualified and definitely well supported. And that's a problem area. That's part of that sort of global, when you step back from your own school, you look at education as a whole and a need to address that very important issue nationally. Thank you very much, Carrie. You've set the historical context, and Juliet, you've focused on teacher, the whole role of the teachers. And we're going to have other discussions in a few minutes talking about other aspects of education in this upcoming national election. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will now look at 0 to 5 education, and my guests here are Allison Chaplin to my immediate right, and then Maria Martinez. And so Allison, we're going to start with you, and you're going to focus on the general education, age 0 to 5 preschool education. So thank you for being here.
Hi. Well, I looked at the program of Head Start. Head Start was founded in 1965, under President Johnson's administration, and it was a way to address the needs for underprivileged families as a way for their children to attend preschool and receive medical and dental care. And since that time, it appears that that program has done a good job in meeting their needs. It's a government-funded program. And in 2005, the Department of Health and Human Services conducted a study that looked at several different constructs. But what they found was that in the ages of 3 to 4, that those children had excelled in areas like pre-reading, pre-writing, mathematics skills, literacy skills. And what was interesting was that they also found that not only was their access to health care improved, but their overall health status was improved as well. And it also appeared that the children, the earlier that they entered the program of Head Start, that the more significant those findings were. So my question to the candidates would be, what are their views on Head Start as a way to address the needs of those families? And it appears that both candidates support Head Start, at least publicly, but when you look at the voting record, particularly of McCain, he's voted against the increase in funding in several years, 1997, 2003, and recently, just last year, he voted against an increase in funding. So I'm curious as to why he would publicly support it and then not vote for an increase in funding for those programs.
Thanks. And one of the things that you brought up is it's not just preschool education to get children ready for school, but it's the combination of other services, including healthcare, and that the children who can participate in these preschool programs, particularly Head Start, there's an overall general improvement, as you indicated, in their health status. So that even though we are talking about preschool education, it crosses areas. It crosses into healthcare areas and social skills areas, as well as the academic areas. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Allison.
Thanks.
Okay, Maria, you were focusing in on preschool education with the special needs population. Could you please elaborate on that and your perspective and what you found in the research?
Well, in my research, I've looked at both sides, Obama's and McCain's, and they both publicly support Head Start, early intervention, but Obama's is more comprehensive on his plan. But what I find interesting is that it's not specifically, they're not addressing special education. There's been research that early intervention really promotes early success with children in succeeding in school, and it reduces cost and further need for rehabilitation and special education. The more findings have been found that if you prolong getting these needs, the children falls more and more behind in their schoolwork.
So preschool education, especially for children who have disabilities, is extremely critical in that 0 to 5 group.
Yes.
And again, you talked about the impact on costs for services. I guess you were referring to later on in terms of school age, that if they have preschool special education, there may be less of a need for that.
There was a research done by Pollock, and he found he took different states. In California, just out of pocket per year, it averages about $708 to 44 cents out of pocket costs. And these are if families with special needs, if they have a mortgage or other medical needs, that's just alone on school special education. And if I found also that in the last 4 years, every year ranging from 1 to 5 years old, there's an increase of students needing special education, about 60 to 50 students averaging overall.
So we have an increase in population identifying students with special needs, and their research is suggesting that if these needs can be met within preschool programs, then again there's the preparing the students for entry into K-12 education, and their ability to probably have less reliance on services if they've received those services at the preschool level. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think you both highlighted the need for public attention to be given to the needs of preschool education, whether for the general population and for the special needs population, and that those, if that area can get some support, then there is more likelihood that these children will then be able to be more successful in school and less reliant on services. And I think, Allison, you brought up the intersection of healthcare, social status, as well as education. So again, it crosses boundaries. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I'd like to introduce our two graduate students who are looking at other issues in the area of education. To my right is Rich Seymour, and next to him is Rolando Crisostomo, and they are going to talk about, Rich is going to talk about science education, and Rolando is going to talk about higher education and affordability. Rich, why don't we start with you? What's happened to science education?
Okay, well, over the last few years, basically to an extent since the passage of the No Child Left Behind Act, one of the things that has been an unintended consequence is that science education has really fallen to the wayside a bit, and that science curriculum has not been implemented in many classrooms across the country to the extent that it used to be, because of the emphasis that schools have to place on meeting certain standards with other content areas and for tests. And so the amount of knowledge that kids have in science when they leave their schools is really decreased from what it used to be. So science education is not in a good state in the country now compared to where it's been in the past.
What's the problem with that, in terms of the context of students ending up with a science background or a lack of science background as they move through education?
Right. Well, a study was done recently, which was done by the Program for International Student Assessment, and what it concluded was that students are behind other developed countries in this nation, and that the areas in which they're behind are, knowledge of science concepts and how science relates to their lives. And knowledge of the scientific method, and so it's something that definitely relates to students and adults. And I think three important ways. One of them would be that certainly jobs and the economy are largely driven by our science and technology knowledge. Another one is that we have many things to be thinking about right now with regard to our relationship with the environment and students' knowledge of those issues. And then on an everyday basis, many of us realize that our consumer choices are often related to science and knowledge of what we're purchasing. And so there are really three ways in which it's an important thing for students to be coming away with, that ability to do critical thinking. So I would say that the two candidates with regard to that offer some different perspectives and also some similarities. And I think a couple of things that are great about both McCain and Obama are that they both definitely feel like they want to recruit and reward teachers of science and get more people into the field and make sure that kids are getting a better science education than they used to. And they both definitely feel that No Child Left Behind, while it was well-intentioned, is not something that's been successful. So they both really have the view of fixing it, not discarding it altogether. And another similarity that they have is they both are very enthusiastic about bringing technology into the classroom and trying to help students learn that way, whether it be with computers in the classroom or whether it be with McCain's virtual classroom where students could be learning online. So I think those are important similarities, which hopefully will bring good results either way. A big difference in the process of how students learn would be with the vouchers and or not using vouchers. Of course, Obama is opposed to the use of vouchers, so he would rather bring in people to support new teachers in the field so that there's good science education going on. McCain, of course, would rather use vouchers to give parents the choice to take students elsewhere if a school seems to be failing. And I think the big issue there, of course, is that vouchers are such a controversial topic, and that the reasons that schools may be failing are multifaceted. And so I think voters have to look carefully at whether they think that the reason a school is failing is solvable through vouchers or not. That will certainly affect science education. On another topic, just aside from process, I would just mention content in science a little bit, and I think there's some interesting differences there too. I would bring up one controversial topic in some people's eyes, which would be evolution, and I wouldn't propose that that is a topic which is on the forefront of the voters' minds right now. But I think evolution as a subject points to the need for students to have critical thinking and analysis skills. Barack Obama has said that he doesn't believe that creationism should be taught in any form in schools because he thinks that it kind of clouds the concept of what a scientific theory is for young people. And McCain, who clearly believes in evolution and is also a spiritual person, as he has said, thinks that local school districts should have a choice as to how they want to approach that issue. And if that's the case, again, I think that it's just very important for us to give students the ability to do critical thinking so that they know what a scientific theory is and what is not an idea that stands up very well as a scientific theory. And for young people to know whether or not certain ideas are even addressable in a science class at all, if creationism is to be brought into schools. Just one other issue that's important certainly right now, which both candidates feature on their website prominently, is climate change. Both the candidates feel as though climate change needs to be addressed. McCain has sponsored climate change legislation in the past. Barack Obama is for it. So I think it's great that the candidates stand where they do on that issue together, because it will certainly mean that we'll have legislation in the future, I think, coming up to deal with it. It will be good for the educational community for both candidates to be thinking about ways to deal with climate change too. I would just put out an interesting footnote that McCain's vice president, Sarah Palin, seems to provide a bit of duality to the ticket at the moment, because although she studies assessments of climate change on her home state of Alaska, she is also quoted as saying that she doesn't believe that it has human causes. So I think that's kind of an interesting contrast between the two parties at the moment, with an issue that I'm sure will be important for science education and the global community as a whole.
Thank you very much. I think it's really important to bring up a very important issue, is that in the era of accountability, which certainly it's common sense, but there are fragments, there's fallout from that, and one of the fallouts has been the attention placed on science education at a time when we need to have, at many levels of education, we need to have much more of an understanding of science in many of its forms, because the impact of knowledge about science, what's going on around us, is much stronger perhaps now for us as a nation than it has ever been in the past. And also just, again, with No Child Left Behind and the emphasis on literacy skills and mathematics skills, that science education needs to be brought back to the center and examined in terms of wherever we go, whatever our leadership is, but examined and put back in place in a serious way in our curriculum. Thank you very much, Rich.
Sure.
Now, Rolando, your focus, you did your research on higher education, so would you please share with us what you found?
Well, I think that college affordability in higher ed is an imperative issue that needs to be addressed in this campaign for president. College affordability is an issue for many families. We've seen an increase in both the public universities and colleges as well as the private schools. In the public schools, about 52% have increased their tuitions tuition fees, and the private schools about 36%. So it's making it very difficult for families, especially those students who are highly qualified, to attend a four-year university but can't because of cost. And part of the reason is that there's not enough scholarship or financial aid that's available for students. One of the federal aid that is out there is called FAFSA, which is Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And that application is quite lengthy, very difficult to apply and fill out the applications, especially if the student's family has never gone to college and is the student's first ever to attend a university. And that process is quite difficult for those families. And so the candidates like Obama, and both McCain and Obama actually have proposed that we need to fix this and streamline the application process, make it more easier for families to read it and to put the right information in. Obama proposes that to get rid of the application altogether and actually just put a checkbox when they fill out their tax, and so that by the following year when the student is ready to go to college, they don't even have to fill out an application. So that's one of the things that the candidates are doing. But I think there's still no determination of how the students will be able to afford college. You know, most private schools are so expensive that they're limited to their post-secondary opportunities. So my question to the candidates is, how would they address college affordability and make it more affordable for, especially for those who are low-income families and or are trying to go to college and are very qualified to be accepted to those universities or colleges. So what are their plans to make it affordable for students?
Well, my question to you in doing your research is, do we need college-educated workforce?
Well, we absolutely do, and in the research I've done, I found out that only about 27% of the population in this country have a bachelor's degree, and about only 4.1% who come from the low-income family has a bachelor's degree. And we know from statistics, from studies, that the higher, if you're in higher ed, if you have a bachelor's degree, you'll be making more income than just graduating out of high school. So it's very important, especially with the weak economy. You know, college is necessary to be able to make it out there in the especially in the competitive job force.
Mm-hmm. And I can certainly see, as we're talking about the role of science education in the K-12 schools and in higher education, certainly as the workforce changes, as the needs, global warming, healthcare, stem cell research and all that, we're going to need a larger percentage of our population having a four-year degree.
And one of the things so I want to add with Obama, he is actually proposing that the first year of college tuition, the first $4,000 that they spend in college, will be paid off by the government. He's also proposing that 2/3 of tuition who goes to public universities or colleges are paid for by the federal government. And he's actually proposing that community college should be flat out free. Right now in the state of California, the unit cost is about $26 per unit. This is not including books and pocket money, transportation, dorming, but this is something that Obama is looking into. You know, by speaking in colleges and universities, he sees that issue. While McCain hasn't really proposed a plan how much money to discount student tuition, he's proposing that there is a need to improve college education and make it more affordability, but we haven't heard anything about what discount and what scholarship is available for students.
Well, as you said, you alluded to the community colleges in the state of California. We have 108 community colleges with articulated programs to four-year schools as well to provide that easy access. But as fees go up, even at the community colleges, even if it's a modest level, then that makes it difficult for people who perhaps can't afford a four-year college but could afford community college. Again, it's making up that difference.
Sure.
It's also important to note that we're not just talking about the 18 to 22-year-old population as well.
Yes.
But the community colleges and the four-year colleges really are the entree for people who perhaps have lost their jobs. They're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and above, and they go back to retraining if there's a job lost or job shift. So again, that puts the demand back on higher education to prepare these people to transition.
Right.
Yeah. I'd like to thank both of you for being here and touching upon some really key issues. Rich, again, the role of science education and how that it is important that we all pay attention to that. And Rolando for looking at training our workforce so that we have more than 27% of our population with a four-year college degree.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
In the place of a major change in this time, as we're experiencing a shift from states' rights and local control over education to a more nationalistic perspective, it's imperative that the public really understands where we've been and where we're going with education. I hope that you'll take this information and go out and vote for the candidate that you believe will truly make that difference.
Okay, anytime.
The problem for teacher retention really speaks for itself. Teachers leave this profession more than any other occupation out there. And in inner city and urban schools, this is a really big problem. So I really urge you to take a look at both candidates and what they're looking for and what their strategies are to recruit and retain teachers so that we can provide quality teachers for all of our students.
Okay. My point is that no matter what side you are on, Republican, Democratic, when you listen to the candidates' views on education particularly, it's important to check out their voting records because I think they can go on record saying anything about what they believe in, but it really needs to back up about what they voted for in the past as far as what their views are. Thank you.
My point is make an educated guess by cutting budgets in special education. You are increasing future costs in rehabilitation and special needs. It's very important for children to get that early intervention and for them to succeed in their school life.
Science education affects various aspects of our students' lives, from the jobs that they'll hold in the future to our relationship with the environment to the consumer choices that they'll make as well. So it's important for our schools to provide them with great critical thinking skills and analysis skills so that they can make their own decisions and therefore lead positive lives.
College education is very important, and college affordability, for instance, is an imperative issue that needs to be addressed by both candidates. So when you go out and vote on November 4th, ask yourself what these candidates are doing to make college more affordable for your child. And what are their plans to make college affordable, especially for students who come from low-income families. I recommend that we study and research what their positions are. You've heard about Obama's stand on making college affordable and McCain, but it's really up to you to determine how these candidates is going to address college affordability for your students.
Well, today we've heard from graduate students who've conducted some research on education issues that are really important to all of us, especially in the upcoming presidential election. We've heard about the impact and the involvement of the federal government in terms of education nationally. We've looked at teacher recruitment, retention, and support, the role of preschool education, the role of science education, and high school, in high school, and also affordability at the college and university level. Please take the time to educate yourself in preparation for the upcoming presidential election. Please also plan on attending the much larger event, VoteSmart Challenge, that's held at Dominican University of California on October 23rd from 9 a.m. to noon. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Sounding Board. This is a television program produced by Seroptimus International of Novato and produced by Novato on Novato Public Access Television. The purpose of this is to inform the citizens about healthcare agenda of the upcoming presidential election and to give you some information about what the Democrats and the Republicans think about the different issues and how they plan to address these healthcare issues. Our group is called Team Healthcare. We are focusing on healthcare coverage specifically. As a bit of background, we have done a research project. We've done a study of the community and to determine exactly what their issues are. We had over 500 respondents and feel that we really have a pretty good pulse of what our community feels. I would like to introduce our panelist and our moderator. Our moderator is Gary Gorka. He is Executive Director of our Library Services at Dominican University of California. Ms. Ariel Richards, who is a master's student in our occupational therapy program at Dominican, and Ms. Vanessa Marsh, who is also a master's student at Dominican in our occupational therapy program. My name is Dr. Barbara Ganley. I'm Director of the Master's Program of Nursing at Dominican, and we are very happy to be here and hope that our program is informative and helps you to make good decisions in November. I'll turn it over now to Gary, and he as our moderator.
Well, thank you, Barbara. I just want to express how happy I've been for the last couple of months working with both Vanessa and Ariel on this project. They've done a lot of research. They've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. It's really interesting digging into the party platforms, getting beyond some of the rhetoric. But I would like to start with the party platforms. Vanessa, if you could give us a brief overview as to how both the Democratic and the Republican Party sort of address the whole healthcare situation in the country.
Sure. Well, both the Democratic and Republican platforms are attempting to address the issue of underinsured and non-insured Americans. It's the belief across the board that Americans are in need of better healthcare options. What we are seeing are small tweaks to the current system to help Americans obtain healthcare insurance. There's some discussion about a universal coverage, which is misinterpreted to mean single payer or a socialist healthcare plan. This is simply not the case. Universal coverage means that all Americans should have access and options to healthcare either publicly or privately. These single payer extremes are just not on the table, Gary.
Well, I know I hear a lot of people thinking that they are. Perhaps you could tell us exactly what is on the table in terms of the platforms.
Okay. The Democratic platform includes strategies that build on existing private insurance markets, such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kaiser, etc., and adding a new public group insurance. The responsibility for both of these is placed primarily on the employee, the employer, government, and they're also proposing some premium subsidies based on income.
What about the Republicans?
The Republican proposal relies significantly on the private insurance market, with no mention of safeguards for the insured. Healthcare costs will be subsidized by tax incentives for enrolled participants in a private insurance company, with out-of-pocket costs placed solely on the individual. Without deviating too much from the current system, both parties still emphasize the importance of private insurance as a means to insure all Americans.
Okay, so it sounds like in terms of the party rhetoric, the kind of electioneer rhetoric, they're trying to differentiate each other a little bit in terms of the big issues, who provides the coverage. But I'm sure there are some specifics here, some details that voters need to know. Have you gotten into the details a little deeper?
Ariel?
Oh, Ariel, okay. Well, tell us.
Both candidates actually reflect their party's platform by addressing that there is a need for medical reform. However, each candidate has proposed a specific change that they feel is important. McCain feels the voluntary purchase of private insurance is the way to go. However, his plan does not suggest the regulation of individual insurance markets in order to prohibit discrimination or to keep costs down. McCain has proposed the use of a tax incentive for individuals who already have private insurance. He's proposing $2,500 tax credit for individuals and a $5,000 tax credit for families. This is families and individuals that qualify by being already enrolled in a private health insurance plan. He's also suggesting that this credit would be refunded to the purchaser of the insurance plan during or with their tax return in order to cover their insurance expenses. So by eliminating employer responsibility in order to provide insurance, McCain's addressing making insurance portable. This way, coverage will follow the employee, the insured, regardless of their employment status. So he's eliminating the employer side of providing insurance. McCain is also proposing deregulation of state insurance markets, so coverage will not lapse across state lines.
Well, let's get into this a little more, because it sounds like we're addressing a problem that a lot of people have. If I lose my job, I can't get insurance, I might have a pre-existing condition, you know, I want the same insurance, I want the same doctor. Addresses one plan, but by taking the responsibility away from the employer to provide that coverage, aren't there some risks to the individual in terms of affording?
Yeah, there definitely are some risks, Gary. I'm really glad that you asked. The portability of insurance across state lines, it may contribute to the loss of state regulations that are already in place. And these regulations protect the insured from certain discriminations, such as age or pre-existing conditions. So for example, currently in New York and New Jersey, there's an insurance restriction in place that prevents insurance companies from charging premiums on age-related or pre-existing conditions. And these precautions would be lifted if McCain's proposal was put into place.
So as I understand you, for portability to work, state regulations have to go away so that you can transfer your insurance across state lines.
Exactly. It would eliminate state regulations altogether.
Interesting.
And it would make the insurance coverage an individual's concern. It would be an individual's right as well, and that is the purpose of providing portability. So the individual doesn't depend on their employer, and they can get the insurance coverage that they feel fits their situation best.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Obama. Is his proposal substantially different? Does he address portability? What are the highlights of the Obama proposal?
Obama doesn't address portability, but Obama is proposing the combination of both private and public group insurance with an emphasis on employer-based coverage. So that's the opposite of what McCain is addressing. Obama believes that the employer should be required to provide meaningful coverage for the employees. However, Obama would also continue to allow the 160 million individuals maintain their current health insurance policies if that's what works for them. So he's not going to take away anybody's current insurance. He's merely proposing a plan that will provide more insurance for a broader population. Obama also believes it should be mandated that children have health insurance coverage. So, but there's also in his plan the idea that certain adults may not follow through with this mandate or may not follow through and provide coverage. And so if his initial plan does not work out, then Obama is suggesting the possibility of mandating coverage for all individuals.
Well, that all sounds great too. Just like the first proposal sounds terrific. We want that. It's not free though. Is Obama proposing tax increases to pay for this? Or how is he going to finance it? How's McCain going to finance his?
Well, Obama, he's actually would like to end the current tax cuts that President Bush has placed for individuals making $250,000 or more, because he really wants to focus on this group insurance plan, where contributions from employers are a significant part of funding, as well as the individual purchasing and the government supports. McCain, on the other hand, has not specifically addressed financing concerns. However, he has suggested an insurance provider reform.
So with Obama really emphasizing more employer contributions, so that wouldn't be a tax-funded contribution, that would be employers paying more. Don't employers already pay a big portion of our insurance?
Well, according to the Commonwealth Fund, and this is statistics here, in 2005, employers contributed approximately $420 billion in premiums for active employees and their dependents. So this is over 1/5 the total U.S. health dollars spent in that year. So Obama really would like to focus on seeing an employer contribution increase.
Okay, because that actually strikes me as less than I would have thought in terms of 1/5. I would have thought it was more. Terrific. What I think I'd like to do now is move into some of the community concerns. Barbara, you might want to explain a little bit how this research was done, but we have a lot of narratives from community members, and they're talking about their concerns.
Right. Our research project was online, and we went. We did not only online, but we went to the community. We went out to the public. We took it to friends and neighbors and different places to get people's feedback on their healthcare concerns. And what I have brought today are a few of the narratives from these responses. For instance, one person wrote, "More employers are increasing their deductibles on insurance plans and having the employee share the cost just to be able to afford to give a product to their employees. Some employers have stopped paying for dependent coverage altogether. When a husband and wife have to pay $1,200 a month for a $2,500 deductible health insurance plan, something is wrong." What would you say to this person? Their concern is the out-of-pocket.
This is an excellent question. We tend to often focus on the underinsured or the non-insured American, but what about those who are insured and who are possibly risking losing their insurance coverage? This is a major concern for millions of Americans, and it was definitely a major concern in the research we did in the community. There were a number of comments similar to this one. According to the League of Women's Voters, healthcare premiums have increased 78% since 2001, significantly faster and higher than inflation and the federal minimum wage. So this is a significant issue. The Obama campaign suggests regulations prohibiting insurance companies from skyrocketing both premiums and out-of-pocket costs.
Well, that sounds good. Does McCain have an answer to this?
McCain is actually calling for less government regulation. He feels in doing that with the insurance market, the competition itself will help regulate the insurance companies.
So his proposal is actually more insurance companies competing with each other to bring prices down?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Vanessa, in listening to this, I think there may be some misunderstanding about what universal health care is, because one respondent writes, "I'm concerned that my coverage will not be as good as what I have now if we go to universal health care. I'm afraid that under universal health care, employers will offer very minimal coverage for their employees and their dependents. I have several chronic conditions as well as a disabled child. As much as I feel everyone should have health insurance, I feel that under this plan, my family's coverage will be greatly decreased." Can you respond to that, one of the two of you?
Barbara, I would like to first clarify that universal health care coverage does not imply one insurance plan for the entire nation. Under Obama's proposal, universal health care coverage means that as a nation, we should all work together and have health care access. So but as Vanessa mentioned previously, the Democratic proposal is not to remove people from current plans and enroll them in public insurance plans. The new public insurance is focused on providing an option for individuals who are uninsured or individuals who can no longer afford private insurance to prevent complete lapse of any coverage. The Democratic strategies support continued involvement of employer contributions and will offer incentives for employers to continue to participate in providing insurance plans. On the other side, the Republican strategies suggest removal of employer as a key player in ensuring employee health coverage. However, Republicans are proposing the use of tax incentives, and which in theory should put more money in your pockets and should help pay for the health insurance that you've purchased.
Can I jump in on that briefly? In theory, it sounds like this is geared primarily at the middle class, because a lot of people, the tax incentives, they don't pay a lot of taxes to begin with. So I can see this appealing to a lot of people who are facing healthcare costs. Do you consider this issue of tax rebates or tax funding to be a good sell from the McCain proposal, or do you think that there are people who would be concerned about that?
I definitely think there will be individuals with some concern. Although, as we'll get into later, McCain does address the concern for Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay.
And he does intend to keep those intact in the system.
So Medicare and Medicaid are still intact. It's not just you're on your own in terms of private insurance.
No, not at all.
Great.
Well, I have a question, and so did one of our community participants. It's about coverage for those who are only partially covered. One of our respondents to our survey said, "I'm only partially covered since I work part-time and therefore pay a substantial sum, that it is difficult for me and that I fear that this will go up and my costs will only continue to get more expensive and co-pays will go up and that it will become unaffordable. I receive benefits through my husband's employer. His employer may drop family dependents. I, on the other hand, work 2 part-time jobs and don't have benefits on either. What do we do for these people who are not just uninsured but underinsured and but do work full-time? They're not eligible for some of these other benefits."
Well, Barbara, as you know, when we set out a few months ago to research this topic, what we were really looking for were gaps in healthcare and the demographic that's not being served currently and by either proposal. And this was actually one of the demographics we saw being underserved and underrecognized, needing healthcare insurance coverage. There are actually 2 things going on here. The first is, how are we going to keep employers participating in funding employees' healthcare? The second is, what about this demographic who have 2 part-time jobs, who maybe do work 40 hours a week, but 20 at each job, not eligible for healthcare benefits? Obama is suggesting actually there are 2 different approaches according to Obama's platform. He is suggesting sliding scale premiums that are based solely on income. So the individual who does work 2 part-time jobs can purchase an insurance or have an insurance premium that's based on their actual income. So that is one avenue for this woman and others who have part-time jobs and no insurance coverage. He's also looking at providing benefit to employers to maintain their role in supplying or in offering insurance programs to their employees.
So, Vanessa, what kind of people are we talking about here that work these 2 part-time jobs? Are they teenagers or?
They're teenagers, they're students. We see a lot of adjunct teachers. Being a student, we see a lot of teachers that are working at 2 universities, working 20 hours as an adjunct in one and 20 at another. Part-timers, also temporary workers who maybe are only seasonal. We do see a lot of that in this area. So
these kind of people that we're talking about often don't have any insurance at all through their employer.
This is correct.
Interesting.
This is correct.
Does McCain address this at all?
McCain believes that the tax incentives that he is offering through ownership of public insurance should be substantial in refunding money. However, what he's not there is no actual research that I've found that supports his approach or his direct involvement with this demographic.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, that demographic might not actually pay a lot of taxes, so a refund may not be enough to cover it. So
exactly.
So you would say that here we found a gap.
Right, and for this group, it's almost a catch-22. You have to have the money to be able to buy the private insurance, and you have the private insurance to get the refund. But if you can't use the refund to get the insurance initially, then you're not going to be eligible for it.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely.
So it's kind of a circular, if you will.
Right.
We only have time for one more question from the community, and that is, healthcare costs for my children are cost prohibitive through my employer. Thus, I have to purchase them through the internet site, which provides coverage at a very high deductible. Cost has increased 37% in 1 year. My primary concern is being able to have healthcare coverage for my children as a working single mom. How would you address that?
Well, I think that's a very great question, and it's definitely a concern for a lot of people. Senator Obama is recommending changing the eligibility for both Medicaid and state children's health insurance program by expanding the qualifications for children. However, if parents can afford it, they will be mandated to purchase coverage for their children.
A mandate. Now that's one of those buzzwords that separates the parties. So what would McCain do?
Well, McCain says that it's the parents' right and responsibility to organize and finance the insurance for their children and make that a priority. But it's also in McCain's plan that it's the right of the individual to provide insurance.
That's interesting because that does address some public health issues, which is that if it is the right of the individual to insure or not insure their children, people can still make the choice not to insure their children, and there may be a lot of children that are not able to receive the medical care. Do you see in your research or in the community that the concerns of children outweigh kind of what your individual concerns are? I mean, is this issue of getting every child insured a big issue that you've run into?
Definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely think there is a concern, and I've seen a lot of research where they've addressed that there's a huge number of children who are eligible for Medicaid, and they don't have insurance and they aren't covered. So that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
So we have a lot more to offer you, and we would like to direct you to our website, which is can be found at www.dominican.edu. We have convocation coming up where you will see more time spent talking about education, healthcare, in our environment, ethics, financial responsibilities of the U.S., and we would like to invite you to that. It's October 23rd at Dominican University from 9 to 11. We want to thank you for your time this afternoon. We hope that you found our presentation helpful, and that you will remember to go and vote in November and vote for the party which best represents your concerns for healthcare or education or any of the other issues, foreign policy. Thank you to our panelists, Ms. Ariel Richards and Ms. Vanessa Marsh, and to our narrator, our moderator, Mr. Gary Gorka. And again, my name is Barbara Ganley. I'm from Dominican University, and we thank you very much for your time today and hope that this has been very helpful.